Welcome back to the Culture Encounters podcast. I'm your host, Chad Ownby, and welcome again to another edition of Road Trip. This time we're going to Kentucky, specifically Louisville, Kentucky. Before we get started, a couple of quick, fast facts about the state of Kentucky. It's known as the Bluegrass State. It was achieved statehood in 1792, the 15th state into the Union. The capital is Frankfort. The biggest city is Louisville. The state bird is the cardinal, the same as Virginia, where I live. And according to this, the state flower is the goldenrod. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to bring in my guest today. I'm really excited about this one. For the first time, a blood relative will be on the show. It is my Aunt Debbie and my Uncle Jim are here with us today. I'm going to go ahead and bring them in. Hey, how are you guys?
Hi,
Doing
Chad.
fine.
How are you?
Good. Thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank you for asking.
Yeah, absolutely. I know it's been a crazy couple of weeks for you guys. You spending Halloween with your granddaughter's first Halloween, right?
Oh, yes, up in Cincinnati.
Up in Cincinnati. Okay. Yeah, I know it's about a 2-hour drive to Cincinnati.
Yeah, an hour and a half, sometimes two, depending on traffic.
Yeah.
She lives on the northwest side of Cincinnati, so it's out a little farther. She used to be closer, but yeah.
I got you.
Yeah, it's not a bad drive. It's my closest grandkids, so that's nice.
That's awesome. I'm so glad that happened. I saw the videos of her in her costume. It was really cute.
Yeah.
Super cute. So we're gonna go ahead and delve in. So my Aunt Debbie has a pretty unique experience. So let's talk a little bit about that. So you grew up in Virginia, but then as an adult moved to Louisville, Kentucky. So let's talk about that briefly. So what brought you to Kentucky, and ultimately, what is how was it for you moving from Richmond or the Metro Richmond area, where you grew up, to another state as an adult? What was that experience like for you?
Well, first of all, what brought me is Jim and I both worked for Philip Morris. I was in Richmond, as you said, at the manufacturing center there, and Jim worked at the manufacturing center in Louisville, which is no longer here. So anyway, we had some common friends friends in common, I guess I should say, that introduced us, and we're just adamant that we would just have to meet, and we did, and we dated long distance for not quite a year, actually, and it was kind of funny. We were dating back and forth, flying back and forth on Piedmont Airlines, which is probably not something you remember.
No, yeah.
We went back and forth for $88 round trip visits. And,
oh my gosh, if only today. Wow.
Yeah, and we joke now that they stopped the airfares and we had to either decide to break up or get married. So we got married. And that's how I ended up in Kentucky.
Well, that's awesome. So in Kentucky, you moved to Louisville. What was that like for you? You know, Richmond has a very distinct flavor, a distinct culture around it. Was there any sort of culture shock for you moving to Louisville? Or did you find like, oh, this is pretty cool, I'm gonna fit in here right away?
I felt like I fit in pretty well from the beginning. The hard thing is I brought a teenage son with me, so that itself was a challenge that I wasn't quite prepared for. But as far as the city of Louisville, there's a lot of commonalities. Louisville itself is about the same size as Richmond. I think 600,000+ people. I've kind of lost my facts on Richmond.
Right.
And the counties, we live out in the suburbs, and it was very similar as well. So that wasn't a big change. Big change was leaving family, and then the other big change as far as Louisville itself, when I lived in Richmond, 2 hours from the mountains, 2 hours from the beach, 2 hours to go up to DC to places there. So the mountains, Blue Ridge Parkway, they were just. At first, it seemed to me there was more to do in Richmond, but that changed pretty quick. So
Awesome. So mentioning things to do, like, things have changed quickly. When I think there's a lot of things to do, I would imagine in Louisville, the thing that immediately I think probably comes to most people's minds when they hear Louisville, if they've never been, is the Kentucky Derby. So A, have you ever been? And B, what has that been like? And I'm picturing you with a giant hat, kicking back, drinking a mint julep.
Mint julep. Oh, you've
Yep.
already knew all about the Derby. I'm not going
Yeah.
to be able to teach you anything.
So the stereotypes are true. Like that's pretty accurate to kind of what happens there.
Chad, it is like a magical time. I still would get caught up in it and love it. Some of the locals, you'd be shocked at the amount of local people that have never even had the opportunity to go to Derby, or
Really?
maybe not had the desire. They think, kind of like sports, watching it on TV is some people's wish, but
Right.
it is really a fun time in Louisville. In fact, it's not even, I would say, Jim, it's not even just about the Derby anymore, but it's like 2 weeks of just lots of fun events. And
Oh, really? I didn't know
yeah,
that. It's like a
yeah,
whole festival now.
it is. It started out, I think, back in 1990, because that's when our daughter was born.
Hmm.
They decided to throw in a kickoff 2 weeks before Derby, which is Derby's always the second weekend in May,
Hmm.
second Saturday. They decided to, or the first, excuse me, in May. Sometimes it's May 2nd.
Right.
Anyway, so they decided to kick it off with a giant air show and fireworks. And it just was such a huge success. Now it is like the largest annual fireworks and air show in the country.
Oh my gosh.
So it's a big deal. And that's how it all starts. And it's just so much fun. And then from there, it's 2 weeks of hot air balloon races and
marathons,
mini marathon, and
Oh, very cool.
a steamboat race, the Bella Louisville and the
used to be Delta Queen.
Delta Queen have a big race on the Ohio River. And I just can't even name. There were just so many fun things that we have going on that even if you don't go to Derby, you get a good taste of something special going on in the city for those 2 weeks.
They set up chow wagons across the city in various locations, and they always have musical entertainment, and that's for the whole week beforehand. And it's just a good area for visitors and locals to congregate and meet, and they always have entertainment there. So
when you say a chow wagon, is that like a food truck?
yeah, well,
Oh, okay.
many food trucks.
And it's
Oh,
literally
wow.
a wagon. And
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Way before food trucks. And they pick several locations throughout the city. And it's always kind of a surprise where they're going to be.
Mhm.
They're always fenced in. There's an admission price, and they're fenced in so they can have police presence to make it safe for everybody.
Right, I got you.
But they
So-
try to include all aspects of the city by putting it in different locations.
Yeah, and the
Oh, that's
admission
cool.
is like you wear a Derby pin, and you have.
Oh,
to
wow, really?
wear a
Okay.
Derby pin. So it's really something that everybody can afford to do, because Derby itself can be a little pricey.
A little pricey, I'm sure. Yeah, with just how big of a staple it is.
Mhm.
One of the other things I think about when I think about Kentucky in general, and I think people might just because of the labels, is the bourbon industry. Yeah, so I think about things that are uniquely Kentuckian, but also uniquely American. That being invented here. So is that something that is still talked about in Kentucky? Is that something
Huge.
that's a point of pride?
Well,
Huge. It's probably next to the horse race industry. It's probably the biggest name industry that brings tourists in. And now they have what they call bourbon trails, where you
Mhm.
start and go through various cities with all the distilleries and everything. And it's grown exponentially in the last probably 5 to 10 years. And they really market it, and it's really been a shot in the arm to the tourist industry.
Now,
like
I've
17
always
distilleries, and
oh my gosh.
spreads. Most of the trail is, I think, around the
Between Louisville and
Louisville and
Lexington.
Lexington area. So you can do it, and you can do a day and just do a few, or you can do 2 to 3 days and just spend a nice long weekend in Louisville and go through the distilleries. And have a little taste. And
That sounds fun. I haven't been since I've been a kid, so that might be something that we definitely have to do next time I get out there.
well, you're
Uh,
invited. Anytime.
thank you. That's awesome. So I've always been curious about this. What is the difference between bourbon and Tennessee whiskey? Is it just semantics, or is there actually a difference in the manufacturing of it?
It's kind of how it's aged and what type of barrels they use,
Hmm.
but it comes back in a way to semantics in that if it's not from Kentucky, it's not bourbon.
Gotcha.
It has to be labeled bourbon. It has to be from Kentucky.
Kind of like Smithfield ham has to be from Smithfield, or
Exactly,
right?
Right,
Got
exactly.
yeah.
you.
And Kentucky sells, and that's probably one of the reasons they keep the bourbon rather than the whiskey is 95% of bourbon is from Kentucky. So I don't know where
Wow.
the 5% sure Kentucky doesn't says that's not
We
true.
don't acknowledge it.
So it might as well just be 100. I didn't even know there was a 5% not made in Kentucky.
Yeah.
Well, that I definitely it's my favorite of if I ever indulge in a adult beverage, it's typically bourbon. So that is so thank you to the state of Kentucky. um, the other big industry I know of, or people might have heard of, is sports fans may have heard of Louisville Slugger. Is that still a local manufacturing company, or have they outsourced to other places now?
No, it is. In fact, it's still going strong. And they have a wonderful museum. If you visit
Ooh,
Louisville, it's
really?
something it's on the top of the attractions. You can get your picture taken with the world's largest bat that's outside. I
Oh,
don't know
wow.
if you've been when you've been
I
here,
don't
but
think we did. It
it's
sounds familiar, but it was so long ago. Honestly, I don't know.
yeah, yeah.
Now,
That's
one
awesome.
thing is they have the museum and the headquarters still licensed in Kentucky, but they actually moved the manufacturing on the other side of the river to southern Indiana.
Oh,
So
really?
the batch are technically made in Indiana, but we're headquartered in Kentucky, and our museum is in downtown Louisville.
Makes sense. So was that a big part of growing up? I know my cousin Whitney. She's about a year older than I am. She played a lot of sports growing up. And you guys were coaches and very active supporters in that. Talk about sports as a thing in Louisville. I know you've got at least two large universities with sports teams. University of Kentucky and then Louisville as well. So how seriously are sports taken? How seriously, um, are sports in Louisville culture and Kentucky culture?
Life and death.
Right.
Dad,
No.
when I moved here, I was in sales with Philip Morris, and one of the first things my first day out at work, you're not going to believe this, but every account I walked into literally asked me, was I a UK fan or a Louisville fan? And
Oh, wow.
you have to pick one. You're not allowed to be both.
Can't ride the fence.
No.
We're very college oriented, the whole state.
Right.
We don't have any major professional teams. I mean, like the Bengals and the Colts, because of being close by, people
Right.
follow. But it's college basketball and football's just coming into its own the last few years. But
Right.
basketball's just been, a tradition of Kentucky, like as big as anything else.
That's
Really.
awesome.
And we've had the rivalry. The legislature forced the two teams to play each other back after 1980 because they wanted to avoid each other. The coaches did, and sometimes even the administration. So Governor
really?
John Y. Brown we played each other in the NCAA tournament, and he came wearing a half blue and half red coat. And afterwards, he went back and got the state legislature and forced them. We have to play each other in football and basketball.
Yeah,
So-
that seems like a license to print money to have a rivalry like that.
Very much so. Very
Yeah.
lucrative for both institutions.
That's awesome. What I always love about sports, I'm not like the world's biggest sports fan, but what I love about sports is that it brings people together from all different walks of life, from different cultures, different backgrounds. So whenever we talk in like kind of this is a good transition. whenever we talk about any different culture anywhere in America, we got to acknowledge the indigenous populations that lived in Kentucky or wherever. So what do you guys know about whatever indigenous populations would have settled in Kentucky or in Louisville? And do you know if there's any homage or homage still paid to them?
Well, it's easy to know the Indian tribes that made up the major portion of Kentucky because all our local parks are named after them.
Okay.
So we have Seneca, Cherokee, Wyandotte, let's see, Iroquois,
Okay.
Chickasaw.
Okay.
Those were the major tribes that were out throughout Kentucky, during its early inception,
Okay.
and they honor them by naming all our. We have a very good park system here in Jefferson County, and all our parks are named after the indigenous tribes.
That's awesome that they, that they're honoring them in that way. So I'm thinking back in my history book. I wonder if that's where a lot of like the Iroquois League stuff took place, where like, you had people like, Andrew Jackson was trying to, forcibly remove people. I'm wondering if a lot of that was happening here too. I know a lot of it happened in North Carolina and Georgia, but I would imagine, everywhere, right? So
Yeah, we didn't have they weren't put on any reservations per se within the state,
mhm.
but we had a large population of Cherokee, and about the Trail of Tears, and
right.
so I'm sure a lot of those were caught up and moved in that.
For
Being
sure.
a border state, it seemed like a lot of it was more centrally in the southern states where when Florida and Georgia, and that's where they moved a lot of people out of. But
Right. And that, mentioning that, you mentioned the geography, which I think is a good segue into the next question that I always enjoy. So growing up in the South in Virginia, we have our colloquialisms, like y'all. Was that a fun transition for you going to basically the Midwest in Kentucky? Was it, a lot of people were like, what is y'all? It was that.
no, we're you all state.
It's funny because a lot of people refer to us, in fact, in my job, as Midwest, but I really think we're more like Northeast or Mid-East.
Really
We're
interesting.
very much a transition area.
Yeah, it's still very much a southern state, rather than Midwestern, I'd say.
Yeah, it's funny. You
Culture-wise.
cross the river up in Ohio, and it's you guys.
Yeah.
And we're you all.
Now,
What do you?
I do notice is that there is definitely an accent
Mhm.
in Louisville that's distinct, and it's kind of like A's for O's, and I'm like, give me some examples, Jim. Like a toilet, they say tarlet. They say,
Oh, really?
Anything with an A. I'm trying to, now that we usually tease them about it, but
So
so
like
there's
boiler would be Fowler or Bioler? Yeah.
Yeah, you just did it yesterday. I'm trying to remember what you said. I have to think sometimes. What did he just say? But I'm used to it now. But there definitely is. I mean, even how you say Louisville as to Louisville or Louisville, it's
Oh, right.
Louisville. Louisville. Yeah.
Yeah, I think growing up I always said Louisville, like Louis, like St. Louis.
Right.
And so it's Lua, like a luau.
It's kind of
almost
just
like
almost
Louisville.
Louisville. That's how you know if somebody from here or not.
Subject for debate, though. So.
Yeah, it's actually really cool having somebody who like moved there as an adult and somebody who was born there, kind of having that contrast. So what do you call a carbonated soft drink in Louisville?
Coke.
It's a Coke, no matter what. It's a Coke.
Somewhere out in the rural areas, they might say pop.
Yeah.
Almost universally, Coke is what we refer to as soft drinks.
So even if you're having a Sprite or a Mountain Dew or a Dr. Pepper,
and I'm sure the people in Atlanta appreciate the heck out of it.
I'm sure, yeah. Free advertising. My fiance, her family is in just outside of Akron in Ohio, and it's pop to them. Whereas where I grew up in Richmond, it's soda.
Mhm.
is what we've
Yeah.
always
That's what I
called
was
it.
going to say. I'm still a soda person. I haven't caught on to the Coke or pop. Soda.
Soda still.
Yeah.
So now let's talk about food. So when I think Louisville culinary dishes, for me, and I'm sorry, people in Ohio listening, I know you guys have Skyline Chili and Chili Cincinnati. We always called it Kentucky style chili because I think my mom got the recipe from you guys.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about what is Kentucky style chili and what are some other distinctly um, Kentucky or Louisville dishes that we should know about.
Well, chili was in my head first when
Right,
you
right,
mentioned food because it was so different for me. The first time I made Kentucky chili, and Jim said, "Oh, you have to put pasta in it. It's spaghetti pasta usually."
right.
I think I made spaghetti with a little bit of chili in it because I had so much pasta in it. But no, the main difference is, and I think they might do that in Ohio some places too, but we do. We call it Kentucky chili. Several
Mhm.
of my family members in Richmond now put pasta in their chili.
Yeah,
And
we
it's
do.
pretty much your basic chili recipes, but you use your recipe, but you put pasta in it always.
Mhm.
You can tell she's still not fully transitioned because it's spaghetti, not pasta. Spaghetti.
Well,
is what it's-
So you
Well,
to
can't
make it right, to make it like it's supposed to be here.
you can't have like angel hair in it. It has to be spaghetti.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
So what else? What are some other culinary dishes that are like, oh, that's a Louisville thing, or
Well,
oh,
the
that's a
most
Kentucky thing?
iconic is Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Oh, you know what? For
No
some reason,
fingers.
it didn't even think about it.
Yeah.
Didn't even. Is that a Louisville thing? Like, did that start in Louisville?
Actually, it was out in the state, just south of Lexington is where Colonel Sanders, you're familiar with Colonel Sanders.
Oh yeah.
Well, his actual name is Harlan Sanders, and he started started a restaurant. He was kind of in that business, and they went around trying to sell his chicken recipe to different places. And the first one that did it was, the name of the town escapes me right now, but it was kind of in mid Kentucky. Now they later became headquartered here when they grew and everything, and matter of fact, I've mentioned Governor John Y. Brown, the one that started the Kentucky-Louisville rivalry again. He bought Kentucky Fried Chicken from Colonel Sanders and built it into the empire that it is. And it's currently part of Yum Brands. And Colonel Sanders stayed on and was kind of like their spokesperson for a long time.
Didn't he run for public office or something too at some point?
John Y. Brown, yeah, he ran several times.
No, I meant Colonel Sanders. Didn't Colonel Sanders run once?
No, not that I'm aware of. He was, after he was successful, he was pretty old.
Got you.
He didn't get started until like in his 60s.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, so he had that look of a colonel because he was old when he started doing this stuff. But,
Yeah, that's crazy. I never even thought so Kentucky, even though it's like an international franchise now, does Kentucky still claims KFC and it's like this is
oh yeah, it's
ours.
headquartered here.
Right.
Yum Brands is headquartered and it's part of Yum now.
I
But
got you.
it's huge in Asia.
Yeah.
They have a lot of franchises in Japan and China in those areas. And,
I've heard
always
that.
big there.
So
It's worldwide.
that's awesome. Yeah. Again, it's really cool to see Kentucky's contributions to the worldwide, world. And it's also, I think, a symptom too of just like how much smaller the world is getting because of, businesses, but also because of, social media and technology. It's really cool to me that the world is getting smaller.
We're connected with each other. Yeah.
Well,
For sure.
we have a restaurant here that also claims, and they supposedly have it substantiated, to make the first cheeseburger. They were the
Really?
first people to decide to put a slice of cheese on a hamburger.
I would say some people would tell you that's a very contentious claim.
Is it
I've been in other cities that make that same claim.
Yeah, I feel like it's like the French dip or the sub or the buffalo wing or something. Like,
Yeah.
I wonder. I'm pretty sure some cities in Germany might have some opinions on that.
Yeah.
So last question that I ask everybody: if somebody had 24 to 48 hours to spend in Louisville, and had to pick one thing to do, what would be at the top of that list for you?
I mean, if you've got any interest in the horse racing industry, we have a really nice museum at Churchill Downs, Kentucky Derby Museum. And I mean, if you like horses at all, you can spend hours in there. It's very, very interesting.
And the icing on the cake with that would be you get to see Churchill Downs itself, which they've just redone, and it is just incredibly beautiful. And if you can also tie in a visit to, we've got horse farm, we've got like 400 and some horse farms in Kentucky, and some of those are within a reasonable range to visit from Louisville. In fact, we've done that the last 2 years. We started going to different ones during COVID because we just needed to do something outside.
Right.
But if you could I'd say things horse related are probably number one.
Yeah. And then outside of Louisville, not too far, we have Mammoth Cave. It's the largest cave system in the country, and it's not far outside Louisville. That you could spend the day going down in that area. It's very pretty down there, and there's a lot of lakes. Actually, Kentucky has the largest number of running water in the whole contiguous 48 states.
Really?
We have more running water streams and rivers than any other state in the country. And you wouldn't expect that for a state that's like 13th smallest. So
that I did not know that. That's incredible to know. I would have thought it would have been like one of the Great Lakes states, but that's crazy.
Yeah.
My grandmother, when I was a kid, actually, no, she probably told me this about maybe 10 years ago. She had mentioned going with you guys to some symphony. Do you remember what that would have been? Or no, I think she went to go see Jersey Boys or something.
Oh, probably the Louisville Orchestra.
We went over to the theater over in Indiana.
Okay. But Louisville has a symphony.
It was a little dinner theater type thing, but it was. I'm trying to think if that's
probably what it was.
where we went to see Jersey Boys. But
okay.
So when she came, we did a lot of fun things. She also went to Derby. She got to go to Kentucky.
Yeah, Mom told me that y'all went once. She's like, yeah, you got to go at least once. Was what Mom said? Yeah.
And one thing about Louisville being on the river, actually, the people in southern Indiana are closer to downtown than we are.
Really?
We're 20 miles outside. Southern Indiana is a mile and a half across from downtown Louisville. So when they talk about the greater Louisville area, they incorporate a lot of, the southern Indiana towns. There's 3 or 4 towns right across the river from downtown Louisville. And so that's why the close proximity. I mean, to us, they're still Hoosiers. They don't belong.
Right. I'd never thought about that. That is really cool. Well, this has been amazing. This has been one of my favorite episodes that we've done by far. Like, I've really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you both so much for being here and helping me with my love letter to the United States and, more importantly, the people in it. Thank you both so much for being here today.
Well, thank you, Chad. Enjoyed seeing you and talking with you again.
Absolutely.
This was fun. We enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Say hello to the family.
That it's something that needs to be prayed away or anything like that.